through. Ba, 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 da, da. Right? Can't go on too long. YouTube doesn't like that. But it feels about right for all the Piscean energy that's going on right now. We have a stellium in Pisces, but that's not what I want to start with. What I want to start with is the Black Moon portal coming up. Spirit has been chattering to everybody, not just me, just everybody, about this energy coming up. Though what's funny is that I'm noticing is even the people who typically like would be the ones that I would go to be like, okay, what is this? What are these aspects and these transits and this stuff meaning? They're busy, or readers that would typically be doing stuff for it, they're not. Oh, excuse me. See, that's when you know it's true. That's what my mother-in-law used to say. But like people are just getting into that it's not the hustle and bustle so much as it's like I feel like the best way to say it is that a black moon, which is when we either have two new moons within a 30-day period and or an eclipse that lines up within those periods that creates another new moon energy. It's almost exactly like a blue moon except for with new moon energy rather than a full moon. But black moons typically happen about every 32 months, so almost every 3 years. And if you think about it, like what have we been going, like, if this was the marker at 32 months, what have we been going through for the past 32 months, right? Most people have been greatly affected by the pandemic, things like that going on. And I feel like right now it is really like a lot of people talked about it for the last few years, like even in the beginning of stuff, like I was, of course, I'm so dirty about astrology and stuff that even my DM can say, like, I didn't predict per se the stuff that was coming, but I did, like, I picked out those that I was like, yes, that's going to happen, and that's going to happen, and then made my own predictions, and I didn't know, like, COVID was going to happen, but I knew something along those lines that would greatly affect society was going to happen because of the astrology. Um, and there were a lot of people in the beginning that were talking about it as like with all the alignments that we had, especially with Uranus and Venus and Mars and all these, all of our normal players, but like there was some emphasis on certain energies, especially Capricorn energies, which is like our social structure and things like that. Social architecture is going to be, reworked, rearranged, evolved, rejuvenated, like, all these different things. And what they were saying at that point in time is that what would be most likely greatly affected by the time that we got out of quarantine would be our closest relationships that we were in at that time. And there's a lot of relationships that began like just before then that were really not meant to continue, but they were kind of stuck together. It was kind of like whatever thing that you chose at the end of 2019, like before the new year, that was the thing that you kind of got stuck in or to up to this point, right? And so, like, if you jumped back into a karmic relationship, that's what you've likely been dealing with for the past 32 months. If you jumped back into old bad career habits, that's kind of thing you're in. Whereas if you jumped forward into like something more healing, even if it was heavy or hard or things like that, you likely continued on a trend of doing that, right? And likewise, if you walked towards kindness and towards light and towards integrity, even if they were small steps, that's likely the trajectory that you continue to travel, right? And as you continued that, you might have started to see, like, a gap and a space being in there with the people who jumped backwards into, further karmic lessons. Which, remember, karmic isn't always a person. It's usually not even a person. It's a thing within ourselves, but we interact with people that become our karmics, and we are their karmics in that sense. But, like, there's been a lot of stuff like that, and a lot of people were predicting, like, by the end of that, like, when quarantine lifts, you're going to see a lot of breakups, you're going to see a lot of dissolutions of family, you're going to see a lot of divorces, you're going to see a lot of that stuff. And what's funny is, like, it was interesting to observe different people making different predictions about when quarantine really ended, astrologically speaking, not necessarily societally and stuff. And, like, some would say, oh, it's going to start now, and then it's going to start then, and we see, like, we've been coming out of it collectively, and that's when we start to see this stuff with like Will Smith, big slap on stage, and we see stuff with Johnny Depp. And what's interesting is it does really highlight we just recently had it's still affecting us till the end of April. Like the sun in Aries hit what's known as a critical angle, a critical aspect to the moon, and it's like it created a lot of like, I want to say unexpected shakeups, but also some expected shakeups. But there was like extra emphasis on them, right? And then now that we have the space where we've got, we had the Aries new moon, the regular one that we'd have, and now we're having a black moon in there. Like that's extra, new moon energy. Plus the black moon is an eclipse, and it starts out our eclipse season. And but wait, there's more. It's in Taurus, which is also where our north node and south node are of the moon right now. So our north node of the moon is in Taurus, while we are starting out our very first eclipse of the year in Taurus, and it is also a new moon. There's like that emphasis on that. So there's this emphasis on like self-love and empress energy and things like that. It's very like divine feminine, and there's also the shadow side of like overindulgence and toxic femininity, and we can see a fair amount of that with Jada Pinkett Smith and Amber Heard, like and I know like in my own personal life, like that, those relationships very greatly reflect what my DM's going through with his karmic. And I know a number of you that I talk to pretty regularly have also described either similar things with a karmic that you're with, and or that you observe your DM going through with their karmic, and it's the interesting thing is, it makes sense when you look at everything that's going on. Having that black moon eclipse in Taurus, where we have our north node, and that's also the axis that all of the eclipses throughout the year, whether they're on new moons or full moons or anything like that, will be on. So there's a lot of challenges and shakeups, and like expect the unexpected energy. Especially we've got some stuff going on with Uranus that's definitely like coming in there, creating rebellion and mischief and change and things that you wouldn't expect. And coming in there with that Taurus energy that is very grounded. Like even in the energy of an eclipse, which typically does shake things up, Taurus brings a grounding energy. And it's really good too, because we have that stellium in Pisces going on right now, which is that very like dreamy, romantic, like it's also like inner child energy, and also like great grandfather, grandmother energy, things like that. It's very spiritual. And of course we have like a triple conjunction going on too. I believe it is Venus, Jupiter, and let's see. Yeah, Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune. And Neptune is Pisces ruler too. And they're all in Pisces. And so it's like we get the benevolent side of like the imagination and the manifestation, and like expansive spirituality and expansive love and romantic love, though we also have the shadow side of like wearing those rose-colored glasses and maybe like associating that stuff to something that does not exist there. Or it could even be, I mean, it's not so much that that's a bad thing, but like if you're trying to manifest something when it isn't there, when you didn't have a baseline or a foundation or a good roof, like it's good, that manifestation going to take a while, you know what I mean? Because anything's possible. I'm a firm believer that anything is possible, but if you're starting from scratch, it just takes longer, and that's not always a bad thing either. Like sometimes we get tower moments, and I know people are like, oh no, like it knocked down everything that I had. But really what I've learned, one of the powerful spiritual lessons is like, you know what, even if you built up something and you thought that it was great and it was perfect, and you had a strong foundation, if spirit comes in and knocks it down, that means that it wasn't, and that it would likely have fallen out from under you at a different time. So like if you continue to try to push something that keeps having tower stuff, that means your foundation isn't strong enough. That means you, like your self-love, your connection with yourself, your boundaries, your mental health, your spiritual health, things like that. So go back and work on that stuff if you're finding, that you're not accomplishing as much as you want, especially in the areas of like career, material possessions, things of that nature, Empress energy, things like that. And really, I feel like all this stuff, especially because we have Pluto in Capricorn, and it's about to go retrograde, literally the day before we have the black moon eclipse. And there's something else. Oh yeah, Mercury retrograde pre-shadow begins, and Mercury is going to retrograde in Pisces too. So that's part of the stellium in there. So and last time we saw Mercury retrograde in Pisces was in 2020, like I want to say like March, April, and there was a lot of themes of like Return of the X, like, Return of the Sith sort of thing. And there was it. I've seen it happen in circle after circle after circle of people around me, and it makes me really happy that I chose to be single and independent throughout these energies, because it was kind of like what do you call it, like a loaded question, trick question, that sort of thing. Like, spirit might be like, ooh, look, there's this nice relationship over here, you don't have to do things alone. But then you get like, you go into it, and then it's like, oh shit, this is like a repeat of everything that I thought that I left behind. And like, now I'm dealing with all the extra shadows of mine and theirs and stuff. And like, I tell you what, being single and independent has allowed me to focus on me and me and me and me and me. And the great thing about that is, like, going through the astrological energies that we had going on, like, I have watched so many people try to kind of go through this, like, I mean, it very much is like Mercury and Pisces retrograde sort of energy of like, oh, that's funny. There's a truck passing by me that says Hercules. Hercules, Hercules, right? And people did, like, they kind of went through their own hero's journey of sort, like starting out that rose-colored glasses, likely with exes or somebody from the past, or a new relationship that mirrored or reflected something from the past, and it just went down and down and down and down. Now, I know Will and Jada have been together way longer than the past 32 months. I'm not sure about Johnny and Amber, but I do know that, like, the way that the court case has gone, it looks like a lot of the more volatile energies, especially coming from Amber, have come through there. Like, those seem to have started within the past 32 months. Or maybe not started, but really started to become more public, you know what I mean? And if you look at, like, a lot of people have been observing the different changes and stuff going on between Will and Jada, too. And even though it didn't start within 32 months, around the time that we had our last Black Moon, it definitely seemed to emphasize and grow, especially as quarantine type stuff happened. And the reason, like, it's funny because it's not just astrologers that predicted there'd be a lot of disillusionments and divorces and breakups and things like that. It was also psychologists and people who, study human mind and things like that. And part of the reason is, in our busy consumerist society, we are usually able to have a lot of space from each other. And having quarantine meant, one, wearing masks, getting out of our comfort zone, doing things differently, feeling controlled and tyranny and things like that. But most importantly, anybody that you started out the year with in 2020, you were like this with them throughout the past 32 months. And I mean, if you picked somebody benevolently and you had good self-love and you weren't in a place of like neediness about things, like, you probably have had a pretty good time. However, if you pick people that were based on that codependent cycle, that hero villain, dynamic, things like that, the drama triangle, then you were like this with somebody who is basically constantly, like, battling with you one way or another, whether verbally or physically or both. And we actually had a lot of energies going on over the past 32 months that, like, if you already had a tendency towards anger management issues, or being volatile, or being in domestic abuse situations, that stuff typically increased. Um, and so, like, your shadow, like the shadows that were already there popped up. And then we saw, October, November, in fact, November of 2021 was when we had the last full moon eclipse of the year, and that was in Taurus also. And so a lot of astrologers are looking at it saying, like, look back to what was going on then, like, September, October, November, December-ish, like, what was going on about that time in the last part of 2021 for you? The stuff that came out, the stuff that came to a head, the stuff that, I don't want to necessarily say ended, because endings are beginnings and beginnings are endings, but stuff that maybe got pushed out of the way or moved or things like that, that stuff is likely to either come back, or you're going to see, like, the progression further away from whatever those things were. But right now, with all this springtime energy, the Aries energy, we're now in Taurus season and Taurus energy. We've got Pluto going retrograde. We've got all these different things going on. There's let's put it this way, there's just as much energy there for inner peace and evolution and, like, delightful divine feminine energy that I just love so much, and there's also just as much energy for violence and manipulation and overindulgence and hoarding and things like that. And then again too, there's, because of second house stuff, there's also a lot of good energy for houses and homes and material energy and real estate and career stuff, things like that. And there's going to be, what I keep seeing in the big themes of what, what what we're looking at the aspects, and two, what other people are saying, we're looking at like there's going to be a lot of new opportunities opening up. It'll be kind of like Pop-A-Mole, the Pop-A-Mole game, but make it doorways, like adjacent doorways. This one, this one, this one, this one. Some will stay open and you can walk through them anytime. Others will only be open for a minute and things like that. And, there's a lot of energy of like expect the unexpected, especially with what Uranus is doing, though it's like most of it is good and exciting, though that that really depends on how much you've worked on yourself and you believe that good can happen to you and to others and things like that. Because if you're still stuck in karma town of shadow work of all life sucks and the world is broken and things like that, you're probably not going to be able to get on the ride of life is good and ride the good Taurus energy. And then because we have the aspect of, Scorpio is the polar opposite of Taurus. It's also our south node in the moon right now. Well, all that energy does come up there. And so what we're looking at is first of all, from about October 2021, but from now until November, when we have the full moon in Taurus, we're looking at a lot of things that are going to have us look at and will challenge the way that we value things, the way, like, what we believe in, especially when it comes to what we can control, what we want to control, what we have control over, where we derive power from, things like that. A lot of stuff will be there. And part of the reason that I like bringing up the example of like the Will Smith and the Johnny Depp stuff, because I haven't typically gotten into a whole lot of like celebrity type stuff. Maybe I will, maybe I won't from here on. I don't know. But I like it because it shows kind of where the collective is at in terms of some of those aspects. And you can kind of see the examples too, like a lot of people have gone in and started looking at the body language of of everybody in court or in in the Oscars, if that's, or the Grammys. I don't remember which one it was. I don't typically watch award shows like that. I'm not that they're bad. I'm not knocking them. They're just not usually in my purview of interests. I would rather be working, Capricorn, and Taurus energy too. Like there are more interesting things to do. But I do like looking at it because, like, if we look at it collectively, it really does show, like, some of the dynamics and the ways that we move differently when we feel like our power is challenged or things are going on. Like Will and Jada's stuff, it really had very little to do with what was going on at the award show. Like, it had more to do with what was going on with each of them individually and all the stuff going on. And it really highlighted, like, toxic femininity. Like, I'm not, and here's the thing, whether you're looking at toxic femininity, toxic masculinity, or any sort of abusive relationships, it's never one-sided. And no, I'm not victim blaming. I'm saying, especially from experience, as someone who's been in abusive relationships, it's always two-sided. And even if you're not being abusive to the other person, if you are condoning it, if you are, what's the word, colluding in it, like, you are a part of that cycle. Like, if you're playing the victim and or you're staying with someone who is abusive to you because they're connected to some resource that you want or feel that you need, you're contributing to the dynamic. You're putting yourself in that situation to avoid the discomfort of getting out of your comfort zone and creating something better, manifesting something better. And so we can see the stuff going on like that between, like, Will and Jada, and then same with Johnny and Amber. And what I really like, actually, in observing some of the stuff with Johnny and Amber is, like, it really highlights, like, the difference between, like, standing in your integrity, being accountable for, whatever shadowy things you have done and have not done, telling the truth, and that, like, it doesn't necessarily always bring you inner peace, but it does help bring you a certain groundedness that, it shows to people. Like, look at everybody who's observing the body language stuff of either of those couples. Like, it will really show you, like, how you can tell that we don't even know when we give ourselves away sometimes. I've been fascinated with body language since I was probably 11, 12 years old, so a long time. And it's really fascinating to see it applied in this way, especially since the rise of the show Lie to Me, which really showed, like, micro expressions and things like that, and you can really observe them. But really, like, it highlights a lot of that energy that we had from, Venus and Capricorn, Mars and Capricorn, a lot of this integrity energy and stuff. And if you've been in that space, like you'll probably see that start to come to fruition very quickly as we come up to the to the black moon eclipse, and going on until November 2022. Whereas, it doesn't. If you haven't been doing that, it does not necessarily mean you're gonna have a bad time. Though it's definitely good to learn to flow with that self worth, self love, that follow your intuition, follow your heart energy. Though also, be grounded. Think about the foundation that you have, because Taurus is definitely a foundational energy. Like, are you turning away the cornerstones that are perfect for having a strong foundation? And if so, why? You know, as my DM used to say, was it the cornerstone the builder refused? And I still don't have an answer as to why the builder refused it. Because supposedly, according to that song, it was the proper cornerstone. Whatever. Anyways, this is a good time to definitely work on spirituality, feeling grounded, working on self love, self worth, things like that. And when you find yourself a little pulled into some of the leaving Aries Ram energy and the entering Taurus Bull energy, like that can definitely hit tempers. It can hit, it can hit places of resources, and it's definitely mother energy, motherhood energy, baby mama energy, like feminine energy. And I feel like it connects in with this energy, and this will be my final point for this video, to make sure it's not too long, is that I'm really seeing a lot of energies that are coinciding with this ending of quarantine and these new beginning, new moon energies and eclipse coming up. That is like, it's kind of the fall of toxic femininity. We've had a very big focus on toxic masculinity for a long time, and I'm not saying that it's without reason. Like, it's good that we went and examined it, that we started to fall into the shadow of toxic femininity some time ago. And in fact, a lot of my own wickedly divine feminine tour and my own like trauma response to so many things going on around me was in response to the toxic femininity going on. And I had a lot of backlash. I even had people from the Me Too movement that were like, "You're gonna ruin the whole movement," because I was defending masculinity, not in a traditional sense, but as its own energy, and that like, and saying like, yes, there is toxic masculinity. Yes, plenty of men are very abusive. Yes, there's definitely a power dynamic in the world that leans towards men. However, that doesn't mean that we need to get into that space of hatefulness or resentfulness, because guess what that is? That's toxic masculinity too. But we also get into the other side of toxic femininity in this place of like being manipulative and using intuition for malevolence, and using children and social connections and love and things like that to try to secure resources and to try to like gain power and stuff like that. And like that sort of stuff, that sort of toxic femininity, and that's not just it, but a fair amount of it, that criticalness, that nagging, the abusiveness in there, like all of it is mixed in there. And the universe is bringing us back into a balance, because we've like definitely fallen pretty far into being out of balance by over focusing on one side and not looking at what's going on in the reflection of the other side. But this is a good thing, because once we get this focus, like, it's really, you're going to see if there's toxic feminines in your life, like any degree of toxic femininity within anyone around you, which does not have to be male or female, not have to be men or women, can come from anybody. But like, you're gonna see like those parts in you, they're gonna come out, so you can observe them and decide, is this something I want to keep? Is this something that's helping me and helping others and stuff like that? And likewise, you're gonna see it come out in others. And anyone who has been like growing in their toxic femininity or toxic masculinity, regardless of their gender over the past 32 months, is, what's the word? What just came to my mind was almost like they're going to be tarred and feathered, but that's not. I don't think that's quite it. People don't do that these days, but maybe in a metaphorical sense. Like, they're going to burn themselves with their own behavior, sort of thing. And so, I mean, and if you end up on one of those timelines, those wavelengths, those channels, find the humility in it and pick yourself up. Pick yourself up and try again, right? So with that being said, feel free to reach out if you want something more personal analyzed for your chart. Definitely look for themes that have been going on since like October, November 2021. And I'll catch you in the next video.